I'm Teresa.
And I'm Callista, and this is Terrifyingly Typical True Crime. Today, we are delving into the life and murder of Darrell Abbott, co founding member of heavy metal band Pantera. And after he and brother Vinnie Paul disbanded Pantera, their new band, Damageplan. Darrell's life was cut shockingly short while he was doing what he loved, shredding on a guitar in front of a room packed with fans. A Pantera devotee opened fire in the crowded club, ending not only Darrell's life, but three other lives as well.
Quote, Uncle Sam taught him to shoot, maybe a little too well. Fingers on the trigger, loaded bullet, he hit the stage, so full of rage, and let the whole world know it. 6 feet away, they heard him say, Oh God, don't let him pull it. Please God, don't let him pull it. How could you put us through it? His brother watched you do it. End quote. These are some of the lyrics from Nickelback's 2005 song, Side of a Bullet. Members of the band Nickelback and brothers Darrell and Vinnie were longtime friends. When Darrell was shot and killed, they wanted to pay tribute to Darrell, even using an unreleased guitar solo from Darrell in their song.
Okay, let's talk about the mass shooting and murder that was the impetus for Nickelback's tribute. A little after 10 p.m. on the night of December 8th, 2004, Damageplan was just starting their set at Columbus, Ohio's Alrosa Villa Nightclub when a heavy-set young man, later identified as former Marine 25-year-old Nathan Gale, who had been standing behind a wall of amplifiers, quickly rushed onto the stage carrying a Beretta semi-automatic pistol and shot Darrell 4 times at point-blank range. The band's head of security, Jeffrey Thompson, 40, tackled Nathan, but in the ensuing chaos was shot multiple times and died. Nathan Bray, a 23-year-old fan attending the show, jumped up on stage and tried to help Darrell by performing CPR. Nathan Gale, seeing this, shot and killed him too. The final victim was Alrosa employee 29-year-old Aaron Hawk. Chillingly, this mass shooting that left four, including Darrell Abbott, dead, was committed on the 24th anniversary of the murder of John Lennon.
Though there doesn't seem to be a defined consensus, many media outlets such as Reuters and CNN define a mass shooting as an event with a minimum of 4 victims shot, either injured or killed, not including the shooter. The FBI defines a mass murder as a multiple homicide incident in which 4 or more victims are murdered within one event and in one or more locations in close geographical proximity. Adding to the carnage, Christopher Paluska, the band's tour manager, was shot but survived. Travis Burnett, a road crew member, was luckily only grazed by a bullet and survived. John Brooks, a stage technician who had charged towards Nathan and tried to wrestle the gun away from him, was impeded when Nathan got the upper hand and grabbed John and held him as a hostage. Police officer James Niggemeyer, who had just started his shift at the 18th precinct, which was only 2 miles away, heard the call come in that gunshots had been fired at the nearby club.
Upon hearing this call, Officer Nigmeyer raced to the scene. Once there, he grabbed his 12-gauge shotgun and headed into the club. It was in pandemonium, with concertgoers screaming and exiting the Alrosa as quickly as they could, yelling, "He's got a gun! Somebody needs to do something!" Officer Nigmeyer saw Nathan on stage, a gun in one hand and his other arm around John Brooks. Officer Nigmeyer stopped Nathan with one shotgun blast. When Nathan's gun was later inspected, it was revealed that he still had 35 unused bullets left when he was killed. A grand jury cleared Officer Nickmeyer of any wrongdoing. Nathan's intent was obviously to do even more damage and take more lives. The damage inflicted would have been horrifying since it was just under 5 minutes from the time of the first shot until Officer Nigmeyer shot and killed Nathan. Four bands were slated to play on this dark and cold December night. Three local bands and headliner Damageplan. A few fans, along with club manager Rick Cautela, noticed Nathan hanging around outside and asked him why he wasn't going in. Nathan charmingly said he didn't want to hear any shitty local bands and would wait for Damageplan to take the stage. Once Rick and the other fans went inside and Nathan was alone, he scaled a fence and entered the venue's side door, hiding behind some amplifiers. As the first notes rang out of Damageplan's opening song, Nathan quickly walked past the other patrons and reached the left side of the stage.
Witnesses thought maybe he wanted to stage dive.
Can fans just go on stage and jump off? Maybe I'm just old, but surely that's a disruption and a safety hazard?
You, of course, are not old. Apparently, stage diving is still a thing and most popular with punk and metal bands. Both fans and even band members stage dive. I think of this as either like a 1970s rock band thing or a grunge thing from the 90s, like at a Nirvana concert. But that apparently is a narrow view. Some bands encourage fans to stage dive and then presumably crowd surf. Of course, it is a freaking safety hazard. And the way the world is so crazy today, what if someone doesn't catch you? Or what if a fan jumps up on stage and has a gun? What happens here?
Exactly. It seems kind of weird that some bands would encourage it. If the person got hurt, that would have to be a liability for the venue and something that could come back to haunt the band.
Definitely. Nathan, though, was not planning on stage diving. Once on the stage, Nathan made a beeline towards Darrell. Darrell, who was really getting into the song, moving his head back and forth with his long hair obscuring his view, never saw Nathan coming. Patrons and employees originally thought the shot sounded like a cap gun or maybe fireworks and assumed that any noise was part of the show. Club manager Rick was behind the bar and initially he continued pouring drinks. However, the vocals suddenly stopped. Vinny stood up from his drum kit to get a better view of what was happening, and Darrell's guitar, still plugged into the amplifier, emitted a loud screech. People knew that what was happening wasn't part of the show. Darrell was pronounced dead on the scene at the age of 38. Let's learn more about who Darrell was. Darrell Lance Abbott was born in Grand Prairie, Texas on August 20th, 1966, the second son to Carolyn and Jerry Abbott. Jerry Abbott was a country music producer and Carolyn was a singer. Carolyn and Jerry divorced in 1979. The divorce was amicable, and the former couple made an effort to treat each other kindly, which we know does not always happen.
Yeah.
And both remained really active in their sons' lives. Carolyn and Jerry lived close enough that Darrell would often ride his bike to his father's house so that Jerry could give him guitar lessons.
Darrell received his first guitar and amplifier for his 12th birthday. He was heavily influenced by the sounds of the bands Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Kiss, and Van Halen. Young Darrell was a huge Kiss fan and became a member of Kiss's fan club, the aptly named Kiss Army. His first concert was, of course, Kiss. He idolized Kiss guitarist Ace Frehley and would don Kiss style makeup and pretend to play guitar in front of his mirror. Before Darrell got his first guitar, he had originally tried playing the drums, just like his older brother Vinny. However, Vinny was the more skilled drummer, so Darrell wanted to learn to play guitar. Jerry, knowing of Darrell's affinity for Kiss, learned some Kiss songs on his own guitar so he could teach Darrell.
And I just have to say how impressed I am with this. I mean, Jerry came from a country music background, and his son is interested in hard rock. So Jerry learns songs that his son likes rather than what I think most people would do is teach him, something he already knows. I think props to Jerry.
Yeah, way to adapt to your kids' interests instead of forcing them to like yours. As Darrell got more experience and it became obvious he had some real talent playing the guitar, he started to enter guitar talent competitions. He won so many of these that sponsors asked him to be a judge so it would be fair to the other participants. Can you imagine how pleased with yourself you'd be if you were so good you were asked to change roles to give everyone else a chance?
I mean, that would be quite the ego boost.
Right?
Darrell and Vinny started Pantera in 1981 when Darrell was only 16. Jerry helped his sons form the band and also helped them release their first album, Metal Magic, in 1983. The band originally followed the glam metal style. Glam metal is often referred to as hair metal. Glam metal was dominant in the early 1980s with heavy metal guitar riffs, and solos which also included upbeat and catchy pop lyrics. Glam metal bands are distinguishable by the band's look, which included big, long 80s hair. I certainly have a mental picture, long, usually with some wave teased all over, but especially on the top, so that there was some, I guess, enviable height, and then plastered lots of hairspray, and probably Aquanet, so the hair would have a chance of staying styled while band members were rocking out and giving it their all on stage.
That's great. I have basically the same image in my head, except the hair is also bleached.
I mean, there were definitely a lot of rockers sporting the bleached blonde as their color of choice. And of course, along with the hair, the look also included sparkly and colorful scarves, either tied around the head or worn over the shoulders, with the shirt usually lovingly unbuttoned at least halfway down their chest. And of course, liberal use of eyeliner. Darrell was known as Diamond Darrell during this phase of Pantera. There are way too many hair bands to name, but a few from the early 80s are Steel Panther, Pretty Boy Floyd, which I love that name, and Motley Crue.
However, as the 1980s progressed, Pantera became more influenced by thrash metal. Thrash metal is more fast paced, with more technical skill and more punk influences rather than pop. The most influential thrash metal bands at the time were Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax. Pantera is often credited as the founder of the thrash metal subgenre groove metal, which takes the fast paced quality and plays it at mid tempo, only occasionally veering into traditional fast tempo thrash. Vocals are often angry and influenced by both hardcore punk and sometimes death metal. In 1987, Dave Mustaine, the frontman of Megadeth, asked Darrell to join the band. Darrell was interested. This was a huge deal. Megadeth was a wildly successful thrash metal band, but he said he was only interested if Vinny could play the drums. However, Megadeth already had a drummer, so this opportunity didn't materialize.
Family first. I love the loyalty he showed to Vinny.
Me too. I imagine a lot of people would have put their own success first. And in the rapidly changing music industry, that's somewhat understandable.
That's very true. The original Pantera lineup also included Terry Glaze on rhythm guitar and Donnie Hart as lead singer, and Tommy D. Bradford on bass guitar. In 1982, Donnie left the band and Terry became lead vocalist. Lead and rhythm guitar fell solely on Darrell. Later that year, Tommy also left the band and was replaced by Rex Brown. Pantera fully embraced the glam metal style and was image conscious, taking inspiration from Kiss, Judas Priest, and Van Halen. Eventually, though, Darrell and Vinny wanted to take the band in a new direction. They were interested in a more heavy metal sound and were influenced by heavy hitters like Metallica and Slayer. Terry wasn't interested in being a part of this new direction, so he left in 1986 and was replaced by Phil Anselmo. What followed was a major turning point for the band. Their first album, with their change in focus and how they were producing music, came with their 1990 release of Cowboys from Hell. This album was a clear signal that Pantera was leaving their glam metal influence behind for mid-tempo thrash metal dubbed power groove. This became the band's first commercial success. Pantera played close to 200 shows supporting the album for the next 2 years. Darrell gained a reputation as a wild figure on tour who gave every performance 110%. Vulgar Display of Power was released in 1992 and became Pantera's mainstream breakthrough. This album had louder vocals and a heavier guitar sound and cemented Pantera as groove metal pioneers. The band was thrust into the spotlight of the metal scene along with veteran bands that they had looked up to and been influenced by, which must have been such a trip. They were not an overnight sensation.
Few are.
True. The band had been working their asses off supporting Cowboys from Hell and was constantly gaining fans. With the release of Vulgar Display of Power, they were being catapulted into the forefront of metal music mania.
Darrell was still listed as Diamond Darrell on this album, but deciding he needed a new moniker, he became Dimebag Darrell after the album's release. The name originated because Darrell never held more than a dime bag or $10 worth of weed at one time. And we should note that this was the 90s and cannabis was illegal everywhere. Presumably, the theory of weed being a gateway drug was still being bandied about. but not by Darrell.
Also, if you are found with a dime bag of weed, I assume the consequences would be much less.
Unless you're black.
Well, of course. I had to do a quick Google search regarding this, and in news that really should surprise no one, a 2020 analysis by the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, concluded, quote, Black people are 3.64 times more likely than white people to be arrested for marijuana possession, notwithstanding comparable usage rates. In every single state, Black people were more likely to be arrested for marijuana possession, and in some states, Black people were up to 6, 8, or almost 10 times more likely to be arrested. In 31 states, racial disparities were actually larger in 2018 than they were in 2010. Look how far we've come.
Oh, yeah, it's like there's no more work left to be done. Anyhow, 1994's Far Beyond Driven marks the first album that Darrell became known by the new moniker. Pantera went on to be nominated for Grammys for Best Metal Performance in 1995 for I'm Broken and in 2001 for Revolution Is My Name. Pantera was one of the most popular heavy metal bands of the 1990s. But with immense success, unsurprisingly, came turmoil. The band's lead singer, Philip Anselmo, began acting strangely and distancing himself from the rest of the band. 2 months after the release of The Great Southern Trendkill in 1996, on July 13th, Phil overdosed on heroin, which he had been using to self medicate for back pain. He had suffered a back injury in the mid 1990s and first started medicating with alcohol, muscle relaxers, and painkillers before graduating to heroin.
Phil overdosed after a show in Dallas, Texas. Phil's heart stopped for several minutes, but he was revived with an adrenaline shot and survived. However, tensions between the band members didn't go away. Phil became less interested in Pantera and more interested in his various side projects. This resulted in Darrell and Vinny disbanding Pantera in 2003. In a 2004 issue of Metal Hammer magazine, Phil commented that Darrell had been verbally attacking him and should be beaten severely. Phil later tried to downplay these comments, saying they were tongue in cheek.
Because physical violence is always hilarious.
That's great. As we mentioned, one of Darrell's first and continued guitar idols was the original lead guitarist and one of the founding members of Kiss, Ace Frehley. He said, if there was no Ace Frehley, there would have been no Dimebag Darrell. Darrell was such a longtime fan of Ace that he got a large tattoo of Ace on his chest. In a full circle moment, years later, when Darrell had had some success with Pantera, he met Ace when they were both at a photo shoot for World magazine. He asked Ace to autograph his chest near the tattoo. Ace obliged, and after the photo shoot, Darrell went to a local tattoo shop and had the autograph turned into a tattoo. That's a real fan for you.
That is some dedication. After Pantera disbanded, Darrell and Vinny, not wanting to sit idly by, formed Damageplan, which also included Patrick Lockman as lead vocalist and Bob Zilla on bass guitar. Their first and only studio album, Newfound Power, was an immediate success. Riding the wave, the band had spent most of 2004 on their Damage Across the Nation tour, and their Columbus show was their penultimate show before they planned to return home to Texas for Christmas. Where they only had 2 shows left to wrap up their tour before the holidays, the brothers used their own special code for preparing to give their performance their all. In unison, they said, Van Halen. Those were the last words Darrell and Vinny said to each other. Less than 5 minutes later, Darrell's life would be over.
Eddie and Alex Van Halen were also inspirations for Darrell and Vinny. Dutch-born brothers Eddie played guitar and Alex played drums in the band they co-founded, Van Halen. Darrell attended a Van Halen gig a few weeks before his death and asked Eddie if he could have a replica of one of his famous guitars. The guitar was nicknamed Bumblebee and was featured on the cover of Van Halen's second album. Eddie was deeply affected by Darrell's death and attended his funeral. At the funeral, he presented the original Bumblebee guitar to Vinny and Darrell's longtime girlfriend, Rita Haney, stating, quote, Dime was an original, and only an original deserves the original, end quote. The guitar was put in the casket with Darrell.
That's sad, but sweet. It feels like the right way to honor him.
It really does. Darrell was often lauded as one of the best and most influential metal guitarists. He was known for his unique style and sound within the heavy metal and groove metal genres. Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley, original members of Kiss, donated a Kiss casket for Darrell. And I shouldn't be surprised that such a thing as a Kiss casket exists. Gene Simmons is quite the Kiss merchandiser.
I think that is still somewhat surprising. I guess you gotta fill your niche though.
I feel like if you can think of it, there is probably a Kiss version, or there certainly used to be. Darrell's death sent shockwaves through the music community. Thousands of mourning fans attended Darrell's memorial, all uttering the same question: why?
Authorities began looking into Nathan's life to find the answer to that question. When they interviewed those who knew and who had been close to Nathan, every person said he had been a huge fan of Pantera. Former friend Mark Brick said Nathan had been obsessed with the band and even tried to submit some of Pantera's songs to a friend's band as his own songs. But these band members recognized the lyrics as those of Pantera's. Nathan then said that Pantera had actually stolen the songs from him and he was going to sue the band. All right, dude, I guess you've got to commit to your story. Nathan's odd demeanor also included talking to himself and talking to an imaginary dog. This weird behavior caused people to give Nathan a wide berth. Having said that, no one indicated that there were any warning signs that Nathan's behavior would take a violent turn. Some witnesses and concertgoers said they heard Nathan yell, "This is for breaking up Pantera," or "You broke up Pantera," before shooting Darrell. However, the investigation was unable to corroborate this evidence or even to confirm that Pantera's split was what caused Nathan's anger. Whatever Nathan's true motive was, many fans believe that Philip Anselmo's interview with Metal Hammer magazine and their Christmas 2004 issue, in which he makes disparaging comments about Darrell, had something to do with it.
Nathan was a construction worker in nearby Marysville, Ohio, which is about 25 miles northwest of Columbus. After graduating high school, he became heavily involved with drugs and told people he was being watched. He had a short fuse, and after he got into a violent altercation, his mother kicked him out of the house and he experienced homelessness. His mother said he could return home if he attended rehab. Nathan enlisted into the Marine Corps in 2002 but left about 18 months later for undisclosed reasons. It has been inferred that his discharge was due to a paranoid schizophrenia diagnosis. His family was proud of his military service and felt like it saved him from the path he was on. Veterans Affairs helped Nathan land a job as a mechanic. After news of the shooting spread, police confirmed they knew who Nathan Gale was. He had a bit of a record, albeit nothing violent, things like trespassing, sleeping in public parks, and petty theft from a few employers. When officers searched his home after the shooting, officers found a number of handwritten notes. However, they were rather scant and cryptic and did not provide any clear clues as to why he set out on his murderous plan. One read, "You'll see me come alive. I'll take your life and make it mine. This is my life. I'm gone. Get me." The true motive remains a mystery.
I mean, to me, that makes it sound like he wanted to take Daryl's place, as does his track record of trying to steal some Pantera songs. That's just my guess, but he was clearly unwell, so I could buy that as his reasoning.
Possibly the delusions seem to have been pretty strong.
Definitely. But there is no mystery about the fact that Nathan was obsessed with guitarists, and particularly with Pantera. In April 2004, at a concert in Cincinnati, Ohio, as the band was performing, Nathan jumped on stage and started destroying lights and equipment, which resulted in about $1,800 in damage. Security quickly dragged Nathan off the stage, and the band decided not to press charges, in large part because they didn't want to have to return to Cincinnati to appear in court. And fair enough, I just want to move on from something like that, not play a part in a drawn out court case. After the murders, investigators were intent on figuring out Nathan Gale's motive by looking back at his life. Many people said Nathan was eccentric, but no one indicated that they thought he was capable of the violence he ultimately carried out. Some people believe that Nathan was so angry that Pantera split up that he took out his unhinged anger on Darrell. However, others thought that Nathan simply wasn't taking his prescribed medication and experienced a paranoid delusion that turned horrifically violent. Nathan's mom, Mary Clark, said that Nathan was discharged from the USMC due to his paranoid schizophrenia. She didn't know if Nathan was taking his prescribed medication at the time of the rampage and said that Nathan was obsessed with Pantera, still believing that the band had stolen song lyrics from him. Mary Clark also confirmed that she had purchased the gun Nathan would use to kill four and injure three on the night of December 8th, 2004, as a Christmas present. Okay, maybe this is just me since I don't want to own a gun, but doesn't it feel weird to give someone a firearm as a present? Like, here's a weapon with a bow on it. Merry Christmas?
I also have zero desire for a gun, so it does seem like a weird present. Ooh, I wonder what's in the box. Oh, well, you look at that, a semi automatic weapon. I mean, I find it more concerning that you know your son, at the very least, has some real mental health struggles, which likely resulted in his military discharge. Also, he is making some weird, obviously unhinged comments about a famous band stealing his songs. Sure, get him a gun. I'm sure he will only use it for target practice.
It does seem like that should have been taken into consideration.
Always.
Yeah. In May 2005, James Nigmeyer was cleared of any wrongdoing in Nathan's death, praised for his bravery with the Distinguished Law Enforcement Valor Award, and named Law Enforcement Officer of the Year. Unfortunately, but not at all surprisingly, he suffered from post traumatic stress disorder and severe anxiety from the disturbing incident where four innocent individuals lost their lives, and we assume many more were traumatized, as you would be after witnessing a mass shooting. He left the police force in 2011.
Vinny later sued the Alrosa Villa Nightclub, claiming the tragedy would have been averted if security at the venue had prevented Nathan from entering. The lawsuit was settled out of court in 2007, and I completely understand this. First, when a tragedy like this happens, loved ones are looking for an answer. They need a reason, they need someone to blame. Second, he is correct. Either the side door needed to be locked so Nathan could not have entered, or at least someone needed to be guarding the door. I'm sure concert goers with tickets were coming in the main entrance and each person had to show their ticket. And I also understand that you cannot leave only one exit door operational in a tragedy, be it a mass shooting or a fire. People need to be able to get out of the building ASAP. I can see that Vinny felt the club should have taken a more proactive stance on protecting the band, the fans, and their employees.
100%. Having a single exit seems like a surefire way to cause a stampede.
It does. At least have some guards so the other doors are open. I don't know. Plan
Mhm.
better, do better. And this case actually made me think of the station nightclub fire on February 20th, 2003, where the band Great White was playing and some pyrotechnics were set off by the tour manager. The sparks ignited the foam around the drum set. Then the sparks ignited the insulation foam in the walls, and the fire quickly spread, and the entire building was engulfed in flames within 6 minutes. There was apparently more than one exit door, but there have been conflicting information about bodyguards blocking certain doors. This was a situation where one thing after another went wrong. The sprinklers didn't go off. The fire alarm was not automatically routed to the fire department. There were 462 people attending the concert in a building licensed for a maximum of 404 people. 96 people died at the site, four more at the hospital, and 132 people were injured. This was the fourth largest nightclub fire in US history. And I think we may have to make tragedies at nightclubs one of our themes. I know there are a lot, from collapses to fires to mass shootings.
I can imagine. It's terrifying to think of being trapped inside of a building, watching those around you die, and knowing that with no chance of escape, you're next. It's actual nightmare fuel.
It really, really is.
Though the Alrosa Villa Nightclub was the place where one of metal music's most horrific events happened, the Alrosa continued operating for many more years. They only closed their doors in December 2020, citing the COVID pandemic for causing a loss of revenue and their eventual closing. The Alrosa had been in business for over 45 years, opening its doors in 1974. The Alrosa was owned by Al and Rosa Cautela. Al died exactly 1 month after the shooting on January 8, 2005, and the Cautela children continued to operate the club after the death of both of their parents.
And I searched high and low and could not find when Rosa died.
We'll just assume that she had the opportunity to live out her golden years then.
Good.
Through the years, the music venue saw a variety of musical acts, including Foghat, Night Ranger, Dio, Slipknot, Quiet Riot, and David Byrne. The nightclub was demolished on December 7th, 2021, to make room for a 180 unit affordable housing complex. The club will, of course, always be synonymous with the death of Darrell and three other people. Vinnie Paul Abbott died on June 22nd, 2018, at the age of 54. Medical examiners found that he died of natural causes, including heart disease, but that's still so young. The Abbott brothers' dad, Jerry, died at the age of 81 at a care facility in Denton, Texas. Carolyn, Darrell and Vinnie's mom, died from lung cancer in 1999. All the family members are buried at the Moore Memorial Garden Cemetery in Arlington, Texas. Vinny is also buried in a donated kiss casket. Because people often suck, a protective fence was installed around the Abbott's resting place in a quest to stop vandalism. Daryl's grave had apparently been scratched and defaced by people over the years.
WTF, people. I assume you would visit the grave because you were a fan. How is it in any way respectful to even touch the grave, but to actually vandalize it?
Even if they're writing condolences, they're still defacing someone's final resting place. I don't know how you could see that as anything other than incredibly problematic and painful for their loved ones.
Exactly. Leave a note or a plaque or, something else.
Hmm.
Rita Haney, Daryl's longtime partner, has dedicated all her time and energy into keeping Daryl's legacy alive. She is involved in Dime Hardware, the official online Dimebag Daryl merchandise shop, along with the Ride for Dime yearly charity event, which celebrates Daryl's life. When asked what continues to motivate Rita to be so instrumental in keeping Daryl's memory alive, she stated, quote, "For one, I think it's easy to love Dime, and that's the one thing I know I'm good at. And two, because of everything he did for me and what an incredible life he gave me, there were so many things he wrote down, designed, and recorded about what he wanted to accomplish. I have all that. And I don't just want to let them sit there and go away. I want him to still be able to achieve all of his dreams. I think I think that's what drives me. Plus, I fucking love it. I love being surrounded by anything that's about him. It makes me feel like he's still always here with me. The key thing is finding that speck of beauty in the ugly. No matter what it is, you can always find something. That was the most valuable life lesson I learned from Daryl because that's how he lived his life." End quote.
Vinny made a similar comment when he said, quote, "It's sad to say, but you just get larger than life when you're gone. It's just really weird. I really appreciate it. The fans have kept his legacy and everything he's done intact and alive, and it's just constantly growing. His legend's huge," end quote. Scott Ian, guitarist for Anthrax, said, quote, "After something like that happens to one of your best friends, how could you ever feel safe anywhere, ever? The few times that kids have made it up onto the stage during our show, no matter how friendly the scenario, the first thing I think is, dude, you should not be on this fucking stage. You should know better." To me, everything changed after Dime was killed. The stage became off limits for everyone but musicians. I don't give a fuck how much fun you're having. Stay the fuck off the stage, end quote.
I totally agree with that. People sure do feel entitled to do whatever they want.
Yeah, what the fuck? Why would you think you can get on stage? No one's here to see you perform.
Exactly. You rock out in front of the stage where you belong.
So you're right.
And because people love to correlate things that are dissimilar into something similar and slap a creative name on it, we have the completely original Columbus curse. This curse always involves musicians who suffered a tragedy around the time they were either in or scheduled to be in Columbus. Around the time seems to either encompass a few days to more than a few months. Because I thought this was an inventive premise for an article, I'll mention a few. Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and JP the Big Bopper Richardson were all killed in a plane crash on February 3rd, 1959, 9 days before they were scheduled to play a concert in Columbus. Their deaths were known as the day the music died. Jimi Hendrix was scheduled to play a concert in Columbus on May 24th, 1970, but canceled due to a quote unquote illness. He died of a Vesperix, I think that's how you say it, a sedative which is no longer manufactured, overdose on September 18th, 1970. Bob Marley was scheduled to play a show in Columbus in October of 1980. However, he became ill and canceled the show. 5 months later, on May 11th, 1981, he died from cancer. Lastly, Stevie Ray Vaughan played a concert in Columbus on July 14th, 1990. He died in a helicopter crash on August 27th, 1990, following a show in Wisconsin. There are other examples, but I think that paints a picture. I think it is more than a stretch to say that these deaths had anything to do with a curse, but props to the writer of the article for their creativity.
I can't really say I see their deaths as connected, but kudos to them for creating original content. 20 years after Darrell's death, GuitarWorld.com posed the question, why is Dimebag still so far beyond relevant 20 years after his death? Here are some answers. Carrie King from Slayer said, quote, with Dime, not only was he taken away from us way too soon, but I've yet to see that next it guitar guy. I'm sure there are some of them out there, but none that stormed the scene like Dime did. Very much like Rhodes, Eddie, etc. Dime was completely effortless and completely crushing all at once. End quote. Rob Halford from Judas Priest said, quote, Darrell's style of playing was a badly needed game changer in the guitar world. He created a powerful magnet that drew all kinds of guitarists into his uniqueness. His flair for breaking the mold will appeal to countless generations, end quote. And finally, Marty Friedman, former guitarist with Megadeth, stated, quote, Dime is more than just a guitar player. He represents a good dude, a happy and fun guy to be around, a bro who lives and breathes guitar and heavy music. He was the opposite of the stereotypical egomaniac guitarist, and that's what all of us hopefully aspire to be. End quote.
Darrell said that his fans were the lifeblood of his musical career. He understood the importance of nurturing this connection. Fans loved Darrell. They loved coming to his shows and experiencing his unique brand of artistry. And okay, that's where we are going to end today's episode. Next week, we will be discussing the murder of Christina Grimmie. All the sources we used for this episode are in the show notes below. If you'd like to suggest a case or theme for us to discuss, please feel free to email us at terrifyinglytypicalpodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow us at Terrifyingly Typical Podcast on Instagram and at Terrifyingly Typical Pod on TikTok. Leave us a comment below to let us know what you thought of the case. We'd love to hear your opinions.
See you next week.